I had to reset everything, so I think we're live now. It's in a different YouTube thing, so if you could let them know to go back out. It just went live now. Good. Yep, I let everyone know, but now, okay, now we're live. Okay. All right. Well, that's just been fun. Okay. Let me go back and let everyone know in the other YouTube. Okay. What a mess. Well, good evening, everyone. Obviously, we have internet issues tonight. I'm not sure why, but it's been fun. But it looks like everything's up and running now. So thank you, everyone, for coming in, and thank you for your patience. I do appreciate it. Um, so glad that it's working. Fingers crossed. Okay, so hopefully we'll get. Yeah. Yes, you have to leave and go to the new one. Yes. So if we have to let everyone know who's on the other YouTube one. Yeah. Yeah. No. Okay. So, yep. So that's been fun. Um, and let's make sure everything's up and running too on X. Looks like it's back to up and running. So yeah, that it's looks like all right, good. It's running there too. So that's good. All right. What a way to start. Okay. So first of all, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Obviously, next week we're not having our live chat unless something unusual happens. Then we'll begin there. Hopefully, everyone jumps in on the YouTube. Oh, here we go. Everyone's back, or everyone's starting to come back onto YouTube. So that's good. Um, so so, a couple of things, as always, just a reminder. Of course, we're going to answer all the questions from premium members first once we get there and I do my discussion. And then, of course, we'll go check out social media, whoever is happens to be left after this fun start. So, yeah, we're going to have live chat returning to doing coverage again on it looks like December 30th, because 31st, who's going to do live chat on New Year's Eve? Although, what do you think? You think that's a good idea, honey? All right. Well, there we go. We got there. There is the final word there. Then it's definitely a no. We're definitely not going to do live chat on New Year's Eve. Uh, But next week, no live chat because we have Christmas Eve. I was thinking about doing it on Tuesday, but there's also things going on too for that. So we do unless there's something unusual, which we'll talk about in a moment. Um, I'm not going to do that. But the 30th, we'll have our live chat to close out the year, and then we're in January, so that'll be fun. Want to talk about real quick about NCAR. Um, Hopefully that while we still can, hopefully the internet holds up for tonight. Don't know what is going on with that. Um, it's really a bad idea to break up NCAR. It has a lot of research. Look, if you have a problem with climate change research, then open it up to everybody, right? Open it up and have different points of view. But if you try to silence people, all you do is create conspiracy and a lot of nonsense. And you're actually hurting yourself in the long run. In order to have proper debate, you want to always have people freely debate. And in order that's the best way to get the best ideas. If you try to shut things down, if you try to suppress people, suppress thought, all you do is let somebody or some other country have that expression and thought, and therefore become better at it because they have that live debate. So you really, really don't want to do that. Okay, so I think it's a bad idea, and it doesn't really save money. Okay, oh, it really, really doesn't. So it doesn't make much sense to me. So now, while we're still here, and hopefully we are still rocking and rolling, let's go and talk about some of the data we have in place for us so that we understand the whole pattern and we get a good idea of what is taking place here. I'm seeing everything's working out well now on X and on YouTube, so I'm glad about that. 127 viewers on on X, and we're rapidly growing here on YouTube. So thank you all for coming and visiting, and I apologize for the delays. So first of all, I want to show you the SOI. Remember what I've been saying for quite some time. When the SOI starts to crash, La Nina's influence goes away. And that is essentially what we're seeing. This has been called since going all the way back to September. This was going to happen. Now our monthly value is down to 2.89, which is very, very weak. It's essentially neutral. And our seasonal value is also fallen down to 7.21, well on the way to falling below 5, as our daily contributions become more and more negative over time. So, what is evolving here with our tropical forcing? Well, if I can get the satellite here, we don't have any convection that's really deep, excuse me, around the date line. We have some, but typically I want to see more robust convection. Our MJO is meandering around 8. But here's the thing you have to understand. A lot of people are focusing in on tropical forcing, but tropical forcing is not the main driver of this weather pattern. Okay, I'm going to say this. Let's repeat again. Tropical forcing, whether warm or cold, is not the primary driving force of this weather pattern. Okay, all right, so now we understand that. The reason why we're seeing these cold and warm phases have nothing to do with tropical forcing or the MJO. It has everything to do with the evolution of the polar vortex. So, yeah, I mean, I'd rather it be in phase 8 than any other phases, sure. As far as the subtropical jet stream is concerned, whether or not we get winter storms have nothing to do with the state of the MJO, which, by the way, is generally expected to be locked in phase 8 for quite some time. The long range guidance going all the way into mid January has it basically stuck between neutral and phase 8. So that basically means very weak, but if there's any type of influence, it would lean more towards the cold. You do have the CFS, which is the GFS cousin, doing some crazy stuff once again. And this is why I wish they would just throw this model in the dumpster and start all over again, because this has been showing up in guidance repeatedly and it keeps on failing. So burn it, throw it away, kick it out. So I'm using the European guidance and the Canadian guidance, and you can use the Australian guidance, basically suggesting the same type of idea of a very weak MJO pattern. Now, while all that's happening, hey, guess what? Our La Nina is rapidly weakening, and the Nino 4 region is warming. Now, let me just show you the daily value here and take a look at where we started at the beginning of the month and look at this contraction taking place here. Gradually weakening, falling apart. And so, what this basically means is that our La Nina is on last legs. And more importantly, if you take a look, let me see here. I think it's this data here. We scroll down and we take a look at the subsurface. It's rapidly warming. Okay, so when you have this signal here, that means the subsurface is basically losing support for this La Nina. And you can see that very nicely here. All of your cold anomalies are under Nino 3 and Nino 4. Nino 3 and Nino 3.4. And under Nino 4, look at this warm water just building and getting ready to expand. That is our future. Okay. Probably a weak El Nino by the time we get to the spring and definitely the summer. But we'll wait. Well, that's another discussion for another time. What I'm trying to show here is that your tropical forcing is not the factor here. It is what's going on in the stratosphere, which is a very warm stratosphere. Okay. So this type of environment would at the very least support a lot of stretching in the polar vortex. And when you take a look at the EP flux, this is your transport from the mid latitudes in the troposphere to the high latitudes in the stratosphere. This clearly supports a lot of weakening in the polar vortex, and that's essentially what we keep on seeing. Now, the models, the European model guidance, for example, at 10 millibars, keeps on trying to create a strong polar vortex eventually. It keeps on failing. The reason why it keeps on failing is that it's having a difficult time handling a lot of the factors that are going into disrupting the polar vortex. So the way you handle this is a very simple question. What's changing in the environment to cause a different outcome? And if you don't have an answer to that, then you don't have to worry about that, right? So I don't trust this solution out here. Now, I do expect at some point the polar vortex to get back towards near normal because it'd be unheard of to have the polar vortex remain severely weak all the way through the whole season. But if you look at some of the clues out here, there's clearly indication that there are more disruptions on the way. So I expect us to continue to see a weak polar vortex that will be stretching and then contracting as we move forward. And so when we take a look at the polar vortex in the forecast here, we see a contraction taking place now, which would support our warming. All right, that's why our polar jet stream has lifted a little bit further north, and the cold air is getting caught up here in Canada. We're kind of returning back to really near normal temperatures. And then as we move forward towards Christmas and into early January, we go back to stretching of the polar vortex and a stretching that would support a polar jet stream that would dip further south. Now, with all this changing going on, and typically with a stretched polar vortex like this, when you're seeing these indications, the model guidance beyond 5 days is complete and total garbage. Okay, you can kind of make out some signals here, but if you're trying to be specific, you're going to end up with a lot of problems. So this doesn't surprise me that we're seeing a warm up back to near normal, above normal if you're in the plains. Then we shift back towards waves of cold air. Nothing like the Arctic air that we saw to start this month. That was all because the polar vortex got destroyed in late November, but waves of cold air. And we're going to be right on that boundary between the warm air and the cold air, the truly Arctic air and the warm air to our south, which puts us right on the storm track. And when you look at the weeklies here, you can see that indication taking shape here of this pattern where you have your strong ridge out here in Alaska driving the cold air southward, subtropical jet stream remaining active. So what does that look like in the temperatures? Well, we're basically near normal, falling back to below normal, a touch above normal, a little bit below normal, just like the winter forecast. We're right on the battlegrounds, and that means we see more moisture and more storms. And yes, that could mean more snow events for you. But through early January, I don't see the quote unquote blizzard that you're looking for because I don't see right now any indication of a strong ridge over the Rockies. As we move forward towards mid January, we might see that a little bit better. But this pattern in the forecast was never for blockbuster winter storms, but a lot of weak to moderate storms like what we just had this past weekend that sometimes can overproduce and keep us surprised. Now, on the ensembles over the next 15 days, we continue to see the signal here that is very interesting with a negative NAO pattern, nice ridge building into Alaska, but a little bit too much around the Aleutians. So, again, this is not a major, let's say, Miller B or Miller A type winter storm setup. This is a lot of clippers, and if you got interaction at just the right time with this negative NAO, you can end up with a surprise light to moderate snowfall event that pops up under 90 hours, much like last weekend. So That's why we're seeing what we're seeing here in this environment. So taking that into account, now we kind of understand what to expect going forward, right? So let me just show you one thing that kind of caught my eye in the European guidance on the operational is this signal right here. Okay, you see this block that sets up here? And you see this little shortwave that comes in under the polar jet stream. This setup would basically put a strong high pressure system in the St. Lawrence River Valley. You have your 50-50 low out here. You have your ridge building in for your negative NAO pattern. More, you could kind of say more of an east base, so it's not perfect. But this type of disturbance undercutting this block is a type of disturbance that doesn't look all that impressive now, but could be surprising, let's say somewhere between the 26th and the end of the year. Okay, so this is a type of signal here that has my eye. I don't have any specifics. I'm just saying that something like this could be interesting after Christmas. Okay, so we're just going to keep an eye on this and see how that plays out. But this is not warm air. This is just heights here. So you have a strong ridge here in the polar jet stream right up here that sets a lot of convergence and confluence. But with this trough up here, that means you're driving polar and Arctic air from here southward into the mid-Atlantic. And then you have these little disturbances in the subtropical jet stream that have been more moisture loaded all year long. Well, all right, all since fall has been more energetic, more moisture loaded than what we would expect 5 or 7 days out, and it could surprise. So I'm going to be watching that very carefully. Next, let's talk about where we're at right now. We have warm air surging into the region, with temperatures falling back to around freezing over the interior, in the upper 30s to lower 40s over along the coast. I am concerned about some freezing fog as we head towards the midnight hours. We certainly are going to be concerned about black ice, as there will be temperatures below freezing throughout the region, and it's been melting all day. So use some caution tomorrow morning. That will be an issue that we're going to watch very carefully. But really, no real moisture out there as far as any type of precipitation. It's quiet right now. But we do have a lot of mid and low clouds starting to develop throughout the region that could certainly cause some problems for us in terms of visibility by tomorrow morning, especially like the fog and whatnot. So I'm really concerned about that. Other than that, it's pretty quiet up until we get to Thursday night, tomorrow night into Friday morning. And this is what I'm concerned about. See this jet streak? This is at 850 millibars. This jet streak marching through, especially this signal right here. See, this signal right here tells me you get a negatively tilted trough, a lot of divergence and diffluence, and a lot of mixing in the atmosphere. And this is a signal for what we call low top thunderstorms. Not your traditional thunderstorms you see in the summer, so not necessarily severe thunderstorms in that respect, but the type of thunderstorms that can take winds like this, mix them down to the surface, and produce 50 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts pretty easily. Okay, so I'm very concerned about that during the morning hours on Friday. The Friday morning rush hour is going to be a mess. So when we take a look at 500 millibar PVA, look at that negative tilt that happens right here. When you see that setup evolve here, that means you have strong lifting, and that certainly will open up the potential for some pretty nasty heavy rainfall, and also the potential for a lot of strong wind gusts getting mixed down. So there's a lot of support here for some very nasty weather for the morning rush hour on Friday. Let me go shift to 850 millibar temperatures, and you can see on Thursday night into Friday, very warm air, supported for convective. Look at this cold air transport on Friday afternoon. Your temperatures are going to be free falling the rest of the day. Your high temperatures are going to be around 7 to 9 a.m. Then after that, falling through the 40s and 30s. And this type of mixing is going to keep us pretty windy throughout the day on Friday. So by Friday afternoon, it'll be 39. It'll feel more like 29 because the wind gusts will be around 30 miles per hour. I would just want to pull up the precipitable water values if I could do that real fast for this same time period. And you see that little spike here? See how it spikes like this? That's a sign of convection setting up. So this would easily support anywhere between a half an inch and an inch and a half of rain throughout the region on Friday morning. So that will certainly open up the potential for localized flooding. On the NAM guidance, there's that low top signature I was talking about right there. Let's see what this looks like on the RFS. This model guidance, by the way, is what's going to be replacing the NAM and the HRR as we move into next year. So we'll pull up the 18Z and we'll take a look and see what this looks like. And you can see the low top thunderstorms right there. Nice line coming right through in the morning hours, right in the middle of our rush hour. Some really nasty weather. So definitely use some caution on Friday morning with those wind gusts easily pushing over 30 miles per hour, possibly pushing as high as 70 miles per hour in a few isolated locations. And just the torrential downpours are going to reduce visibility below a mile. So this is certainly a concern here. And then after that, the cold air rushes in, and up towards the Poconos and Catskills, you guys might even see some lake effect and snow squalls marching their way through right behind this cold front as temperatures are crashing. You can see that all throughout eastern Pennsylvania and you guys in central Pennsylvania dying for snow. Not exactly the most impressive snow, but hey, you got some snow squalls out there possible on Friday afternoon and evening. And then after that, the winds kind of shift and cut off any type of lake effect scenario. So Saturday and really most of Sunday is pretty quiet, maybe just a few isolated showers. And again, on the European guidance, again, we all know what the GFS has been trying to do. Don't get me started. Um, Around Christmas, around the night before Christmas Eve, I don't know what you would call that, Tuesday night, you're going to have some rain snow mix, nothing really significant. But Christmas Eve and Christmas Day is going to be pretty quiet. No torch, though. Temperatures generally in the 30s. Not exactly what I'd call hot. And then we're going to keep an eye on this system on Friday. But it looks like there's a clipper to the north of us. And again, we'll keep an eye on these other disturbances as we move forward towards the end of the new year and get ready for 2026. So that's generally what I have for tonight. I am going to now follow up and take all of your questions. And again, if you are a premium member, we're going to cover all of that here. I'm going to start off with a couple of questions sent around 5 o'clock, actually. And then I'll work my way through everyone. And then we'll take a look at social media and see what you guys got out there. I do want to say thank you for holding on. What a mess, right? So let's. Oh, well, what are you going to do? Let's see here. Right here. Okay. Our Michael was asking at 5 o'clock. Are the winds of on southern Long Island moderate to or impressive in your opinion? Do you think model will downscale, upscale winds for tomorrow? I think that generally I'm expecting powerful wind gusts around 30 to 50 miles per hour, possibly up to 70 miles per hour in the South Shore. I do expect power outages. I do expect wind damage, so I would definitely be prepared for that. So there's a pretty good high chance, and they already have advisories out. Do you think that the light end of the tunnel reveals late February? Don't know yet. My idea is that by late February, we start to back off and we start to trend more towards, let's say, spring. But like I said, one of the key things I'm watching out for is very warm water around Nino 4. If we see that around the date line and more convection around the date line, that could mean that we have some surprises on the way for late February and early March. So there's something just to keep an eye on. Will there be severe thunderstorms at this event? Yeah, there'll be severe thunderstorm warnings. Won't be the severe thunderstorm that you're accustomed to in the summer, but it will be due to the mixing down of the strong winds in the jet streak that you will see winter storm warnings because of the strong wind gusts. Let's see. Thomas says, my friend from Canada just texted me in Calgary. There is an emergency for the roads, ice fog, and snow. 80-car pileup. Holy smokes. Yeah. Man, that is nasty up there. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. Um, but we got it fixed. Yes, Houston, we definitely had a problem. I don't know what the heck happened. I really, really don't. It seems to be, I'm not even going to say anything. But it was certainly impressive why that happened. I turned everything off, turned everything back on. I don't know. I don't know. Let's see here. Uh, cannot believe this time next week is Christmas Eve. Where did the year go? It went that way, and it took my Mets team. That's all I'm saying. And my Chiefs, by the way. What a year. Actually, I'm looking forward to 2026 because in terms of sports, 2025 was a dumpster fire. No question. Just Merry Christmas to you and Susan. Well, thank you, Dave, and Merry Christmas to all of you or happy Hanukkah. You know, I'm always happy holidays, whatever. I'm always up for a feast. So whatever you celebrate, if it includes a feast, I'm happy for it. Let's do it. So absolutely. Sundown to 6 sunspot groups, all quiet. The Mega 3 spot is a row producing no flares. Let me tell you about 2026. It's going to be a year where you're going to see that sunspot number decline. I would not be surprised if we start seeing some blank suns. And then we could start talking about buildup of ozone in the upper stratosphere rather than the lower stratosphere with the EP flux. Um, but the QBO is by that point will be positive, which opens up a different environment. So something just to figure out. Again, when it comes to stratospheric environments, you do not want to go with hard rules. You want to go with general themes and then adjust based on what you're seeing. So that's going to be an interesting discussion for next fall and winter. With it being so cold so early this year, do you think the Great Lakes will freeze over this year? I do think they have a good shot, but I do also think that the better chances towards the Western Great Lakes. I think the heart of the cold air of the Arctic air is going to be more focused towards the northern plains and the Western Great Lakes and the Canadian plains, and we're going to be on that edge and that battle zone. I had to watch the replay. My iPad is at 5%. Oh, sorry, Thomas. I'll see you there. The suspect I suspect the current 10 millibar vortex, bless you, will be strongest and most consolidated. It is all winter and it is still rather stretched. While 70 millibars is all over the place, both levels have large amounts of warm air transport. Yeah, I mean, as long as that EP flex is going, we're going to continue to see the stretch polar vortex. Mild guys is going to have a continuation of a hard time seeing it until it actually falls under the 7 day period. But there we go. It seems to be a pattern that will send a lot of clippers our way. Yeah, I know that there were a couple people that were dying to see clippers, and you're getting it this year. That is for sure. I definitely think we'll see high wind warnings. Any chance of wintry type low cape high shear tornadoes? No, not this, not tornadoes, but straight line winds. Absolutely. Is it crazy? I will say this. I would not be surprised because there's straight line winds and some downburst winds that a tornado signature shows up and they put out a tornado warning, but no actual tornado is observed. Good coffee. Is it crazy to expect what? Which coffee are you drinking tonight? Oh, the breakfast blend. Yeah, it's some good stuff. Let's see. Is it crazy to expect 30 inches of snow total this winter in southern New Jersey? I wouldn't call it crazy. I think some things have to fall into place just right, but I wouldn't call it crazy this year. Do we ignore the teleconnections? No, oh, absolutely not. You don't ignore the teleconnections, which is why I am not calling for any type of major winter storms. But you have to understand how the teleconnections are interacting with each other. Because again, a lot of people like to get locked into these hard rules for forecasting with teleconnections or ENSO or MJO. You can't do that. The atmosphere is far too fluid for you. For the atmosphere doesn't care about your rules. Okay, it doesn't care about your definitions. The atmosphere is a fluid environment, is a chaotic environment, and you have to look at how those different blocking features are interacting with each other. But at the same time, there are certain blocking features that will support major winter storm patterns and some that will not. This one will not. This one features, with the negative NAO signal, a lot of support of cold waves coming in and then retractions back to warm or near normal, and then cold waves again. This one is a clipper pattern, and then this one is basically something that would definitely set up something similar to what we saw last weekend. So let's see. Are the low top thunderstorms forecasted for Friday morning be part of a squall line that will generate the strongest wind gusts? Yes, I do think so. Yes, because the nature of the thunderstorms, the rising motion, creates mixing and then brings the thunderstorms down, the strong winds down. So, yes, absolutely. All right. So, it sounds like, honey, I get a feeling that there's some issues on social media. Yeah. All right. Let's see what we got here.
In particular is spamming two platforms.
Well, that's good.
They're enthusiasts, but they need to rein it in a little bit.
Well, sometimes enthusiasm and too much coffee can be a bad thing. So,
Josh.
Josh, is he asking about Central Pennsylvania? Yeah, he is. Okay, look. All right. The Appalachian shadow effect is never over. You can't get rid of the Appalachian Mountains. Like it's there. Okay, so we've had this. Josh is also in our Discord, which if you want to join, it's a great little group, nice little group. We talk about weather all the time. All right, so Josh, I'm going to put this to you. Your expectations are way too high. That's why you're always disappointed. You're on the lee side of the Appalachian Mountains. You're always going to get what you would call screwed. Okay. That's not going to change unless you blow up the mountain, which I would strongly suggest you not doing. So, in that respect, that's never going to change. What needs to change is your expectations of certain amounts of snow. Then you won't be as disappointed because, like I told you, if you're always disappointed, maybe your expectations are too high.
You see him on YouTube.
I got him on YouTube and on X.
X, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I know it's frustrating. It's okay.
Jeff also has a question on X.
Yes. What does Jeff? What does Jeff have?
Read it.
Okay, let's see what Jeff. Nice hat. Thank you. I love this hat. Susan got me this hat. Very nice. I love it. So, as we touched on this morning, can you elaborate on the run to run model chaos and why sampling is so poor, causing guidance to flip and flop and act like a dead fish, essentially? And your favorite, how we should use the European and your favorite model, the GFS. Okay, so first of all, what you do with the GFS is you ball it up, you practice your jump shot, and you throw it in the garbage, and then burn it, and then throw it in a landfill, and then burn the landfill. That's what you do with the GFS. As far as the European, this is the rule: 10 to 15 days out. 10 to 15 days out is just the theme. 7 to 10 days out, you're looking for clues. Okay, some things that could catch your eye. Under between 5 and 7 days out, the overall plan for your forecast, general idea of what to expect, stay away from details like snow maps. 3 to 5 days out, more details of where to expect your heavier precipitation if you're dealing with a storm, temperature boundaries, stuff like that, where your problem areas are. And then under 3 days, that's where you start to dive into your details. Um, as far as to why, all right, well, first of all, it doesn't help when we're reducing the amount of observations we have, okay? We can't do that. And that's leading to issues here with all the model guidance. But to be fair, it's not just some reduction in observations, it's also a recognition that this pattern is incredibly chaotic. Okay. You have short waves coming in, even in the best sampling environment, coming in from the Arctic that are never handled very well. Yes, even with our friend AI, yes, the Terminator is still having some issues with that, and it will for as long as it exists. We also have a lot of disturbances coming in from the Pacific. And then you have the interaction of those disturbances over the Rockies, which in itself is a difficult forecast, and then diving into the plains, running into a high latitude blocking scenario like the negative NAO. All of these factors, well, I love it because it's forecasting, but you hate it because it just leads to a whole lot of nonsense out there and chaos. So that's why you're seeing what you're seeing in that respect. It becomes a real mess, and this is why I would suggest when I get excited about something, that's when you know that something's real. You know, as someone who holds a CDM seal, I take that very seriously, and that's why there's a difference between myself and someone who doesn't have that seal because they don't take it seriously. They just want to scare you and then drive up the views. Which, by the way, I do want to say thank you to everyone that followed with our last live chat, with our live coverage of the storm. We had 100,000 viewers, some of them from New Zealand, of all places. So thank you for being there. I really appreciate it. Let's take a look and we'll see what is going on in YouTube land. There's a lot. All right, so no live chat next week. The Euro AI is definitely producing some. The Euro AI is very interesting. It's okay. Okay. It needs some work, but it does show some interesting signals here that I'm kind of picking up on. I agree with. Um, let's see. Josh, the snow hole is eternal for you.
The idea of a New Year's Eve thing, but I just
uh, let's see here. 20 inches in Philly, 1.3 inches in Harrisburg. Yeah, that sounds about right. Let's see here. I'm looking to see some good ones on YouTube. The SOI crashed, but so did the MJO. Well, the MJO is going to crash because the SOI is weak. Everything is weak in terms of tropical forcing. When you have a strong MJO signal, you're going to see strong negative or positive daily values. So if we had a strong MJO 8, then you would see negative values in like the minus 20, minus 30 range. And then your seasonal and your monthly values really tank. So the fact that the SOI is weak is a direct result because the MJO and ENSO is pretty weak. Let's see here. Look, as far as the central, I would not look any of you guys in central Pennsylvania. I would not be enthusiastic about snow in this pattern unless you get some lake effect squalls and snow showers out there. Um, So, oh, and by the way, yes, please do not use the damn CFS. The CFS is a long range climate model. Not a, it basically it's like this. Let's say you want to hang up a picture, okay? And you have a moderate sized nail, right? You don't want to use a tiny little hammer because it'll take you forever to put it in the wall. And you don't want to use a sledgehammer, which is what the CFS is, to put it in the wall because then you'll also put a hole in your wall. You want to use a regular hammer, which is the, I hate to say it, the GFS, the European, the CCM synoptic models. Anyone using the CFS for a solution to a storm or snow potential should immediately be ignored because they don't know what they're doing. They're using the wrong tool. Let's see here. Yeah, definitely. I definitely like the idea of cold in the Northeast. I know that, and as far, if you're looking for a quote unquote torch, head out towards the plains. Um, the Rockies are going to be cold. The Northeast is going to be cold. Northern Mid Atlantic and the Great Lakes are going to be cold. But it's going to be pretty warm in the plains for really much of the holidays. The La Nina signal got a little bit of a boost because of the Kelvin wave, but that is fading, and the rest of La Nina is collapsing. Let's see here. We talked enough about central Pennsylvania. Let's see what else we got here. Um, I would say the next potential for some interesting weather will be after Christmas, December 26th through the 29th has my eye. And then I would probably look after January 3rd um, to see any type of snow potential. Because by then, that's going to really influence our stretching. We kind of want to get that ridge that's in the plains and retrograde it back towards the Rockies, which I think will happen. Let's see here. Let's see, I'm just trying to dive in. Steve, can I buy you I love the GFS shirt? No, thank you. Although we are starting to work, we heard that you guys really liked this, right? Which, by the way, I love too. Let's all thank my wife for finding this. I forgot I even created this. Mm, keep.
Live in this house.
I do. I just forget things sometimes. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot to put that. Seems like a positive PNA is a key for block. Yes. Yeah. All right. So here's the thing. If you want a major winter storm blizzard, what you want are three things. Okay. Actually, four things. First, you want deep convection at the date line, 5 days out. Okay. That's the first thing. Two, you want a ridge axis. Okay. You want a ridge centered over the Rockies, specifically around Montana. That's two. Three, you want a negatively tilted trough with a trough axis somewhere between the Mississippi River Valley and the Tennessee River Valley. That way you force all your lifting on the East Coast. And then four, you want a negative NAO with a upper level low or an upper level trough around 50 north and 50 west, which locks in your high pressure system right in the St. Lawrence River Valley and keeps your cold air on the coast. If you got those four things, game on. That's why winter storms like that are very, very difficult to pull off, even in the best years, because it's very hard to get those four things to line up. Let's see here. Let's go back to our live chat here and see what we got here. There's a lot of good questions here. All right, so let's start at the top here. Uh, is it almost impossible to expect a blizzard at some point with this pattern? This one, yes, but not for the whole winter. But this specific pattern, yes. Series of storms that give us 4 to 6, maybe 8 inches of mostly light, fluffy snow is perfectly fine with me. And that's generally the high point. Like what we got last weekend was the maximization of this pattern potential. Steve, does our chances for a large Miller B snowstorms increase in mid-January? Yes. I do expect a thaw. I don't mean just 1 or 2 days of warm weather, but a general like 5 to 10 day period of warm, quiet, zonal pattern type weather sometime between late January and early February. Um, I don't know the timing just yet exactly, but sometime in that time period, I do expect a relaxation in the polar and subtropical jet stream with a very zonal pattern and a little bit more consolidated polar vortex. But up through mid January, yeah, there's definitely a potential there. Headed to Binghamton, New York for college basketball. Cool. On December 29th from Tinton Falls. Is what you are concerned about the over by then, or should we reconsider plans? I wouldn't reconsider plans now, but I would have backup plans, right? I would have backup options if you need to reconsider now, so that way you could pivot to them once we get more data. Okay, and stay tuned to the premium videos that I put out each morning because if something really starts to pop up, that's where I'm going to really start to focus on that. And of course, all the other premium discussions and whatnot. But I would set up your backup plans now so that way you can pivot to them quickly and don't have to, rush through them and be thrown off. Could the negative NAO cause a bit of a slower version of the storm we had last week for the 26th, 29th time frame that you talked about? Only if we get that ridge axis to build a little bit more over the Rockies. Other than that, no. You'd get the negative NAL will allow the storm to actually possibly happen, but you would still need more amplification out west. I recommend purchasing Northeast snowstorms if you guys want to see how to get a major widespread East Coast snowstorm. 100% agree. It's the best. I remember I got that book. It's the best book I have ever read on winter storms. It guides me quite a bit in forecasting. A lot of people ask, "Hey, how do you get this good? How do you know these signals?" And I know these signals because of amazing research by people like Kosin and Mussolini. Can you explain more detail what a positive TNH pattern is? Okay, so let me see if I can get 1 second here. Let me pull up some data. Okay, perfect. And let me flip this. Okay, so essentially a positive TNH pattern, and I described this in the winter forecast as well, so definitely check that out. You essentially have a very powerful ridge here over Alaska and around the Aleutians. So if it's around Alaska, you set up that negative EPO pattern, which then really forces a trough into the eastern United States. Otherwise, you kind of get this broad trough that cuts through the Rockies and cuts up towards the Tennessee River Valley. Now, the difference is that with a positive TNH pattern, you also have a negative NAO in play here as well. So, what you have here is the polar jet stream dropping down through the Canadian Rockies, swinging up through the plains, and then heading up towards the Tennessee River Valley and towards the Mid Atlantic. When you have a strong negative NAO pattern in place, it forces the storm track to redevelop off the mid Atlantic coast, thus your Miller B's. Um, and you also get a lot of clippers, like what we've been seeing. You kind of get this little weak ridge signal down here towards the southeast. A positive TNH pattern shows up a lot during weak La Nina events, which allows for a lot of cold air to build into the Rockies and northern plains and then bleed eastward. Now, when you have your ridge shift more towards Alaska and you get a trough around the Aleutians, like I think we're going to see as we head into January, then you shift the trough eastward and you drive your colder air even more so into the eastern Great Lakes and into the mid-Atlantic, and that also leads to a storm track that typically focuses through the Mississippi River Valley, lower Mississippi River Valley, towards the Tennessee River Valley, and then redeveloping off the North Carolina coast or Virginia, and that is where you could potentially get your more significant Miller B storms. The way we have it now, by the time the Miller B storm, that redeveloping low off the Delmarva or New Jersey coast gets going, it's already out in the Atlantic. So typically we have an underdeveloped precipitation shield, which can be very tricky to forecast, as we saw last weekend. But at the same time, this pattern also leads to a lot of waves of cold air and then retraction back to warm air and back again. So it's a very volatile weather pattern as well. Your coldest air, except for what we just saw in early December, is typically found in the northern plains. So you're talking about your single digits, teens, 20s, stuff like that. In this type of pattern, typically the northern mid Atlantic ranges somewhere between the mid 30s and mid 40s for highs and mid 20s to mid 30s for lows in a typical year. Now, there's variability in that, of course, but you get the idea. Basically, near normal, maybe slightly below, maybe slightly above from week to week, but no extremes, unless you completely destroy the polar vortex, like what we did back, well, what the atmosphere did back in late November. So that is essentially that in general detail. Go back to here and pull this back up. Yes, that is the Cosin book that we were talking about. Let's see here. See if there's anything else going on YouTube. If tropical forcing is so weak, why is subtropical jet active? Because we're seeing more convection around the date line, we're seeing a more active subtropical jet stream. If we had a stronger La Nina, the subtropical jet stream would be very, very weak. Because we have weak signals in phase 8, you get a little bit more robust subtropical jet stream, but nowhere near as strong as if it was an El Nino. You could technically get a powerful winter storm with just a PNA blocking. It's a little bit harder to pull off. It's a thread the needle type situation, but you could definitely pull it off. It's usually a very fast moving storm, though. The differences between a PNA, WPO, and EPO are basically they're meteorologists love our acronyms. Okay, they're basically different ways of describing the location of ridges and troughs. So, a negative EPO usually features a deep trough around the Aleutian Islands and a ridge over Alaska and building into Western Canada. A negative WPO typically means there is a powerful ridge either over Alaska or around the Aleutians into Alaska. It's not that far off from a negative EPO, but the ridge is a little bit more broader, so you have a little different statistical analysis on it, and it's more likely to lead to a deeper trough towards the Rockies into the plains. And then a PNA is the existence of a trough or a ridge over the western United States. If you have a positive PNA, you get a ridge axis over the Rockies. If you have a negative PNA, you have a trough. At the same time, here's a great way how statistics can be misleading. If you have a strong ridge over the Canadian Rockies and northern Rockies of the United States, but because of the subtropical jet stream, a trough in the southern Rockies, it can actually look like a neutral PNA, but in reality, it leads to more of a positive PNA influence. So that's why you can't just go by the statistics. Let's see here. We'll leave January alone. I don't think we see. I think we see. I think we see some strong air masses, strong cold air masses in the plains. I'm not convinced we see that again in the Mid Atlantic. I think we saw our coldest air in the Mid Atlantic for now. Now, if the polar vortex goes through another major stratospheric warming event, then I would change my mind. But just in a general idea that we don't see another wind reversal event for the rest of this winter, I think we saw the coldest air where, like I'm talking about, where we're in the teens for highs, which I don't think anyone wants around here anyway. But I do think we still see cold air, just more like in the 30s range rather than the negative teens range. Let's see here. I think, do we have anything else on X? Oh, oh, yeah, we got something on Twitch too. Thank you as always for everyone following Twitch. We're going to answer that question next. Uh, yeah. Yeah, we right now in this pattern, no, but I think as we move through January, yes, we do have a good chance of seeing some coastal storms. On Twitch, I tried to watch most of your live coverage Saturday night. It was pretty impressive system, especially towards the end. We ended up getting 7 inches in Southeast Bucks, and I'm interested if we would have gotten more considering it took a little while for the Arctic air to invade. And of course, happy holidays. That's from Philly Weather on Twitch. And I would say that if we had more blocking, we definitely would have had more snow out of that. If the Arctic air had come in a little bit faster, yeah, I think that that forecast was very difficult because of the timing of the Arctic air. But if the Arctic air came in faster, we might have been talking about pushing 10 inches on that thing. Not because of the additional moisture, but because the snow ratio went through the roof. So, yeah, I mean, absolutely. It was interesting. What would enable another shot of very cold Arctic air into our area? I would say that we need to see a major disruption in the polar vortex again. And I mean like something similar to what we saw in late November to really set that up properly, in my opinion. I think we see that coming into the plains, and then we kind of get like a glancing shot. I definitely see that as a possibility. But that's where I'll go from there. Uh, and again, I just want to thank everyone that actually followed during that whole event. That was a lot of fun. Let's see here. I think that we covered everything, and it's pretty close to an hour worth of coverage after we had our little disruption. And yeah, thank you for everyone's patience. We really, really, really appreciate it. I don't know what happened, but Kremlins, which is perfect because it's around Christmas.
Just as we're about to start.
Yes,
The
yeah.
timing.
It's just it's gotta love it. So first thing I want to do before we end up, I want to first of all thank everyone for an amazing year. We have one more before the new year, but just in case you're too busy, thank you for being here. Um, the last live coverage event blew my mind. 100,000 people. I just can't get over it. That's just amazing. And you know, yeah, listen to right, exactly. And the whole thing is that that's all without any support from any type of major corporation or any type of TV company or anything of that nature or network support. So thank you. It really does mean the world to me. Um, as far as the holidays, I just hope everyone has a wonderful holidays, whatever you happen to celebrate. Um, and I hope you enjoy your time with your friends and family. And just know that we really appreciate you. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk about the weather, to share our passion, and just thank you. I don't know what else to say, but
Your passion.
well, I
My
mean, yeah,
passion's you, really, but
yeah, but still, I mean, you help out a ton, Susan. So you're part of the show always. Everyone
yes,
knows
you are
that.
my passion.
But where do you think the MJO will hang out for the rest of January, February, and March? Uh, I still like it in phase 8 and 1. I think eventually you'll move into phase 4 and 5 for a short period of time during the reload, sometime in late January. But I do think the overall theme is going to be phase 8, 1, and 2. Um, I think that's a good way to answer to end tonight with a question about the MJO, which, by the way, will remain weak. Okay. Um, Again, thank you, and I will see you on January 30th. Maybe we have something to talk about, or maybe sooner if we have some sort of winter mischief. In the meantime, stay safe out there.